Hello, welcome back, everybody, to another year of the Sunday Podcast.
I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
Back in 2025 for our 5th season. You can expect more of this.
He's claiming that he was ill before the semi-final, whatever. But, you know, I just feel like at that point he was just looking for attention.
And some of this.
And you normally say, no human is limited. So I can't limit myself, or I can't just say I can do.
As well as event coverage around all the major races on the UK circuit.
And if you're a fan of the pod, please give us a rating and review on your preferred podcast streaming service.
And if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news, give us a follow on Instagram at Sunday Podcast.
As always, thanks for listening. See you next time. And we hope you enjoyed the episode.
Okay, guys, welcome back to another episode brought to you by sportshoes.com. As always, Mr. Justin Davies on the podcast this week. The 22-year-old trains out of Team Bath and at Bath University as well, coached by Martin Rush, and obviously competed at the European Indoor Championships just last week. We sat down with him a couple of weeks ago, kind of in the week, building up to Euros, post the British Champs win over 800 metres, and what a great season he's had. So really exciting person to look forward to watching in the summer. Has a PB of 145.3 outdoors and backed that up with a 145.7 indoors this year as well. And we really chatted to Justin, Matt and I did, around his approach to racing, how he becomes so dominant on the track. When he makes a move, he really makes a move, and it's really tough to get around him. So we're super excited to see how he's going to get on. Listen on to hear from Justin himself about what his training's like, what his life's like, and what his plans for the future are. So as always, thanks for listening to us. Enjoy this episode, and we'll catch you guys very, very soon. Okay, first off, Justin, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you on. And how's the past week been since becoming British champ?
Thank you very much for having me. No, it's been good. I've been very focused on Euros, so trying to sort of balance training, make sure I'm not doing too much, not doing too little, so I can peak at just the right time. But no, it's been good. Thank you.
Justin Davies, or shall we say Erling Haaland? Do you enjoy the comparisons?
I did have it on my Strava bio, so I feel like I kind of have to.
Oh, no, mate. There's a lot of canny resemblances, to be honest with you. Even the way you sort of are a bit of a killer on the track. But mate, look, one thing as well we wanted to ask you. You opened your season with a 146 indoors out in Spain. A few weeks later, you're sort of slogging yourself around Bucks cross country and finishing up that short course. How did that feel?
Funnily enough, that's actually an error. I had to message my agent about that.
I was going to say, I didn't see
I didn't go to Bucks at all. I'm not touching cross country for the rest of my athletics career, so I don't know why parents decided to put me on Bucks short course. I know.
Okay. Well, this is it. I was just as intrigued. So I was like, I don't remember seeing you run round, but maybe you did. Maybe I didn't take notice. But okay, so you definitely weren't in Cardiff running that Bucks short course. Okay,
There we go. Well, look, Justin, obviously we'll talk about the British champs in a bit, but let's rewind a bit, because you're still based at Team Bath and Bath Uni, but you also grew up there. So a lot of people, I guess, we speak to them on the podcast and they talk about how they grew up in a different place and they thought, I want to go to uni to, I guess, take it to the next level. Yourself, it's clearly worked for you to stay in there. So talk about, I guess, just growing up in Bath with running and then deciding to stay there because it was clearly working for you.
Yeah, so I sort of got into the sport when I was 10, I guess, as most young athletes do, was through cross country. And then my dad got in contact with this guy called Martin Rush, who ended up being my coach when I was 10. He's still my coach now, so it's been good 12 years. And yeah, I was doing cross country for the majority of my sort of, I guess, early years. And then I switched over to 15 for a bit. Did the odd 800, but I didn't really think anything of it, just wanted it as a sort of fun activity. Then I became second at English schools just before going to university over the 15. So I thought, okay, this is my distance. Finally, this is my thing. And then, yeah, I decided to stay at the Uni of Bath. I think the main decider for me was course over athletics at that point. I knew I wanted to do biomed. And as far as unis go, I think York, Bath, and I think Warwick do those courses. And then I had to consider the athletics, and Bath is just head and shoulders above the rest when it comes to that. So that was why I stayed there.
And you must be pretty grateful now how it's all turned out.
It was such a good decision.
Yeah, no, that's a nice feeling. I think You must have quite a powerful relationship with Martin. There's not many athletes who are still with that same coach they had when they was 10 years old, especially once they've reached the heights of becoming a British champion. So maybe just talk how that relationship has evolved over the last few years.
Yeah, it's definitely an honest relationship. I feel like whenever we have any sort of complaints about training or performance, like we just talk about it and try and resolve any issues. And especially, I guess, in recent years, we look at the training block for, X number of months going ahead, and he says, right, we want to hit these sessions at these times to peak for these races. So we did this in September for the indoor season, planning out all the weeks. But it's very open. Yeah, open and honest.
Yeah. Good stuff. And what about some of the training itself? Because I think particularly what's interesting with you is you mentioned yourself just then that you were focusing on the 1500, and you've kind of, clearly realised that the 8 might be the way to go now. But have you always been, I guess, training like an 800 runner, or has it been very much that traditional 800, 1500 split, or maybe even kind of like a pure 1500 to cross-country guy?
So this season was the first time I actually trained as an 800 metre runner. I think what I know works for me is training almost like a 1500 metre runner. I guess I'm quite lucky because I don't need much speed. But what I do lack is endurance and that sort of anaerobic power. So that's what I mostly focus on with, a lot of tempo, threshold, 5K base, etc. I don't really I have the odd 800 specific session in before racing, but it's not something we place particular emphasis on.
It's strange.
Yeah, we try. Sorry.
No, you go, man.
Like the plague as well.
But you not stumbled, but it's very rare that people find the 800 at 21, 22 years of age. They're usually sort of labelled as an 800 runner, 15, 16, 17, possibly 18. Like you realise, hey, do you know what? I've got some raw speed about me. Perhaps the 800 is going to be the event. So when you were growing up, did you not have that speed? Because obviously to be a 145 guy, you must have a lot of speed reserve in there.
No, I didn't. It's sort of an interesting story, I think, as to how I came out to be an 800 metre runner. So I never touched any gym weights until I actually got to university. So I feel like I didn't have great speed before I got to uni, and I think that was definitely a deciding factor in that. Then in the end of my first year of university, I tripped over a tree root. Bearing in mind, I was trying to get to the World Under-20 Champs for 1500. So I'd run 3:43 that season. Then I was 18, 19, I think. But then I tripped over this tree root and I think a grade 2 or 3 sprain in my ATFL and AITFL, and I was out for 13 weeks. And then because of that, once I'd recovered from that in September, I had more injuries because my left leg had atrophied. This is a long story. All the way through to December, I had continuous injuries. Then I went off with England Athletics to a training camp in Cyprus, which was just fab, by the way. And I damaged my IT band by stupidly training through it. Took me up for 10 weeks until sort of March time. And then at this point, I hadn't put much aerobic power in the tank, and I didn't have confidence that I could run a good 15 that season. And so my coach thought, you know what, let's just give the 800 a shot. It could be a good opportunity. And then, so the first 800 for me was Bucks outdoors, and I got a bronze medal, which was pretty cool. And then I did a time trial at Manchester and I ran 1:47. So I thought, you know what, 800 is pretty good. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah, wow. Like you talk about it there. It really, really is, I guess, stumbling upon it. I just want to hear a bit more about that gym work. So you mentioned you kind of started at university. Was this something that you got as, I guess, being a performance athlete at Bath, or was this something that you were kind of experimenting with yourself, or was it your coach who brought it in?
So the performance setup at Bath is really good. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and there's a really good S&C coach at Uni of Bath, and he kind of analysed what I needed and set me on a program.
How many times are you gymming a week now in terms of, and how does it like relate to the rest of your running and that sort of thing?
I train Tuesday, Thursday morning, normally after sort of a 30-minute easy run in the morning. But I do definitely dial it back before competitions.
Fair, yeah. I was going to say, has that evolved as well? Has that progressed over the last few years? And what's typical gym routine for you now?
Yeah, I have noticed, I guess, what I found very difficult maybe a year or two ago, I do all quite easily now. Typical gym, sing cleans, RDLs. I do spam calf raises. I sort of have a predisposition to Achilles problems, so seated and standing calf raises, as many sets as I can manage twice a week. I found that really helped. some limited upper body pull-ups, I guess, for stability. I need to do more core work. I actually don't do any, which is quite bad. And, hip thrust, standard, I guess, gym procedure.
God, he's going to be a 143 guy once he starts doing core.
Getting the sauna like Haaland. He's been doing that recently.
I wish I could get in the sauna, honestly. It'd be so good.
There we go. Well, look, let's chat about last weekend then, because, like you say, almost stumbled into that 800 because you had a crack at the 1500 British Champs, kind of outdoors a couple of times, and then obviously third last year in the indoor 8. What did you take away from that bronze to then convert it to the win this year?
Interesting. That's a good question. I think that maybe it allowed me to give myself a sense of belonging, possibly, that actually I do belong at that level. Because I distinctly remember before that final is that, I can't believe I've made it. And actually making the final in and of itself last year was like, what the hell? This is so cool. So I think actually getting that bronze maybe gave me some confidence that I do belong at that level.
I think that's a good point, because that final, the way I remember watching it, and Limot takes off, Higgins goes with him, and it was almost like it paid off for Higgins. He had the kind of the balls and like you said, the confidence to just go with it. And I could see the rest of you got caught in 2 miles in 800. You overthink it, it's game over.
Exactly.
And you kind of won that race behind.
Yes. I remember talking to my coach before it, and he said the only strategy which is going to work is to follow Guy Limot because he's going to take it out. And, he was absolutely bang on with that. And I think at that point, my race tactics weren't the best. Obviously, Jack knew exactly what he was doing, and he made the right call, and it paid off for him. Yeah. No, I agree.
But I was speaking to your agent as well before this podcast, and that's something he did say. That sense of belonging, you are starting to adopt this real killer instinct, and you've always had it, but I think you're just starting to realize it. He referred to you as a bit of an assassin on the track, whether it be in training or racing, and I could see it. The Haaland comparisons are real, people, because when you sort of get rolling in these 800s and even the 15s, you do look unstoppable. And I think anyone who knows the sport goes, where's a ceiling for this guy?
Thanks. I guess I'm not great at long-term goals necessarily. My coach Martin is good. He says, I think you can achieve blah. And I'm like, are you sure about that? No, I sort of look at the season ahead and I think, okay, I'd like to achieve this time. I'm not necessarily great at the bigger picture. But yeah, it is quite reassuring to sort of, I guess, watch back British Champs and actually see how I ran. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It's this weird feeling like watching yourself run and actually win an event which you thought you wouldn't even be able to participate in, a couple of years ago.
Do you analyse? Yeah, do you analyse that race back? Or do you just watch it, and be like, good job, man?
Bit of both, I guess. My coach and I like to analyse tactics, see what went wrong, what didn't, where to go improve next time. I think this season there's been less of it. I definitely remember from my season over in Spain. One thing we spoke about is just not letting the gaps form and trying to stay in an attacking position, I guess, for the entire race. If someone goes with it, you've got to be with them, because in an 800, if they go and you're not, and you're a couple of meters back, you could just lose them. So I learned that from my race in Spain. And then I think the last few races I've been executed quite well. But if there are any tactical errors which I made, I'll absolutely pick them up at the end of the race and just learn for next time.
Yeah, and that's something I was going to ask is how close was last weekend, the win, to what you'd set out to do? Because I guess from the outside looking in, as soon as you moved up with 400, you kind of start paying closer order, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't see any way how you weren't going to win that race. The way you just moved past with such confidence just looked like that was exactly part of the plan, and that no one was then going to kind of even challenge you.
Thanks. It definitely was the plan to attack from, 300. I guess from my understanding, I didn't want to leave it in the hands of a kick. I do back my kick in those circumstances, but I know Randolph and the others, they have something special. And I know that coach with 1500 background, if I can take it out their hands as much as possible, I know that will play in my favour. Randolph, knowing that at 400 to go, you can see it on the tape. He drifted out into lane 2 and 3, and he spoke to me afterwards saying, yeah, I was just trying to block you from getting past. But then, I was like, right, I have to go now. I'm not going to leave it to the last 200. And then the 300 to go just wound it up. And then Martin also, I guess, says because I'm, lucky in the sense that I've got long legs, it's more challenging for people to get around me. So actually being at the front in an indoor race specifically does benefit me.
It's a good point, because one of the questions I was going to ask you, how different is indoor 800 meter racing compared to outdoor 800 meter racing? It's one of those events where I think there is a big difference. And do you train differently, or is it just tactically it's different?
I think the training's the same. I think the difference definitely comes down to the tactics. It's a lot more physical of an event. Yeah, you're definitely having to be much more assertive to get to where you want to be. I think that front running has fewer downsides indoors, definitely. Obviously because of the wind, but also people just have to work that much harder to get around you, not only because of the bank bends. I guess there are more bends as well. But yeah, you have to work extra hard to get round someone, especially if they've got a slightly larger frame.
With that then, in preparations for the Euros, obviously, I think Matt and I have spoken a lot previously about this, and I think the 800 is one of those events that if you can get through the rounds, everyone's almost on a level playing field, purely because of that instinctual and kind of really, I guess, art form that is indoor 800 meter running. So how are you going to prepare for that, of course, without giving away too many of your secrets?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I've spoken to my coach quite a bit about how to get through the rounds, and I think that is the main challenge for Euros. It's just surviving through the heats and the semis. I haven't necessarily had the opportunity to simulate race scenarios in training, but it would be through, I guess, that kind of, simulating training and racing where others would be, boxing you in, etc. That would be a good training measure. I haven't had the opportunity to do that, but it would be through that probably.
Hey, what does that preparation look like off the back of, you mentioned that Euro indoors was always the goal. And I guess as the indoor season starts to evolve, was it literally after you won the British Champs, you were like, okay, I'm going? Or were you sort of even before British Champs thinking, okay, I should be on the plane to Euro indoors, providing I just execute the right race?
Yeah, it was a tricky one. At the start of the season, I didn't think it was possible at all, to be honest. I mean, it was on the training calendar. You could see Euro indoors, 6th of March. I was like, that's not happening. And then did the Spanish race. I was 0.4 off the qualifying standard, 1.5 off. And I thought, okay, right, there's a chance here. If I play my cards right, I could just sneak under the qualifying standards. And then the Kiwi Classic happened, and I was like, oh wow, that's quite something. And then I guess going into the champs, I was the fastest one. I still didn't think it was going to be easy at all. Martin said I would have to, run better than I have ever run in my life to be able to get on that plane. I think I didn't necessarily expect to come top 2 at all in the lead up to that race. I was hoping for it, but I did not think it was, a guaranteed thing.
And then off the back of that, your preparation now into your indoors, have you hit your last big session, or is that tonight? When are you going to do that last hit out?
The last big session is today at 2.
What is it? Can we know?
What is it? Okay. It's 1 400 flat out and then 2 120s. That's it. Yeah, it's keeping it quite light. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, from obviously watching the Bath Milers on Instagram and stuff, you got a great interactive page, and your coach Martin Rush shares a good bit as well. That's kind of a common session for you guys to do, or like another classic. Well, from my opinion, is that 2x300 that you like to do as well.
Yeah, the Bath Milers, by the way, is dead and buried. That is why I love
dead and buried.
We haven't been able to post on it for a while. The other teammate's been injured for some time now. Sorry, that's why. We tend to, that's the thing, Instagram likes the shorter sessions where you can say, I ran X speed, and then people can be wow, even though that's quite a rare session for us to do. I guess, in the lead up to races, we do much more 1500 work. Those 2-300s are a favourite, maybe on the week of the race, but that's just when you just want to turn the legs over and, I guess, not produce too much fatigue for the, race coming up that weekend.
Well, there's me getting all excited.
Matt's been thinking you've been ripping 2-300s every single week and just working down, but
I love that.
Interested to know. So today, right? You obviously going into that session. It's not a session that intimidates you because, of course, you can do it. But is it one where you're looking to run that 400 quicker than you have done previously, or is it one where you don't really mind what you run, but it's essentially how you feel running it?
That's a good question. I think from an ego point of view, I do want to see how fast I can run it, but that's not necessarily the point of the session. I think it's just to simulate that race pace or a little bit, actually will be faster than race pace, but to just get the feeling of it, get back in the kind of flow just ahead of the weekend. Because it would be the last long rep before opening up on the track.
Yeah, I think you talk about you do a lot of 1500 work, a lot of aerobic work to get ready for the 800. And are you still improving your top end speed, like year on year? Have you seen that sort of 400 time come down, or your 200 time?
We don't specifically do 400s that much in training for speed, so today's actually quite rare. I have noticed maybe a small improvement. Did a standing start 200, a couple of them last week, and it was 23.2 and 23.3. So I don't really standardize. It's hard to compare, I guess, different reps because Bath is a very windy track, and anyone listening to this will understand quite how bad it is. But it's hard to compare, I guess, between reps. Maybe a slight improvement on the top end speed. I think most of my improvements have definitely been on the aerobic side. I've noticed that this year, being able to just bash out 10k worth of volume in a session and at a pace which I can sustain maybe 1 or 2 years ago.
It's interesting.
Sure. And one thing we wanted to ask you about some of that training is how does that stack up against that that degree you're doing? Because obviously you mentioned you're studying biomed. Are you doing a master's at the moment, or are you still on? Yes, you're on a master's now. So how does that balance of training and racing look like, or training and study, look like for yourself?
It's definitely quite challenging. I think if I had to go and do it all over again, I still would. I feel like the degree's given me, I think it's forced me to get my act together and actually be disciplined and organised with training. It is definitely rewarding, but it is also challenging because there's quite a lot of contact time. The assignments are, they're stress inducing, but definitely there are a lot of them. I think I'm lucky that actually I'm an 800 meter runner and they don't take away that much from the assignments wouldn't take that much away from training, since the training, I don't have to do 160k weeks. I stick to 80 and it's okay. I think it was definitely harder last year. I was doing a placement. It was a 9-to-5 job for the most part. And it was definitely, the case where training was being compromised. I'm sure, for most people having to do a 9-to-5, they're just used to it now, but I guess I'm just going to start complaining. Waking up at 6:45 to do a half an hour run before getting into the office for 9. Bear in mind, my commute is a 15-minute bike ride, so it's not even that bad. Yeah. No, it wasn't fantastic. And having to, I guess, talk through with my supervisor, I have to be away at this time to do this training. And then when things out of my control would happen, say, I have a VO2 max test in Birmingham, or I guess in Cardiff now, actually, should say that. And then I drawing blank here, hold on. And then, it wouldn't go down too well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Because it would just be outside of work schedule.
Yeah. I mean, you say, I guess it was easy, or it's easier to sort of, juggle training around studying when you're doing 80k weeks. I almost think the endurance stuff is yes, it's time consuming, but it's easier to get in. The quality doesn't quite have to be there. Whereas when you're a 8:15 runner, there's a lot of times during the week, even the way that you approach your S&C, it's quite high quality. You have to be switched on. You have to be engaged when you turn up to training. You can't just sort of get out there in the dark and sort of pad along. So is that what, I spoke to you after the Keely Classic, and, of course, there will be talks about you turning professional, and you do want to go down that route. And I think that work in that 9-to-5 last year, did you sort of realize, if I'm going to compete at the top level in this country and globally as well, I'm not going to be able to juggle work.
Exactly. I think that was a big realization point for me. If I do want to carry on, go down this path, and I do, because, I love it to bits. It's a fantastic sport. I can't do a 9-to-5. And I know some people can manage it. I think, for me personally, I think it would be too much of a compromise on training to be able to get to where I want to go.
Yeah. And to be honest, you see some people can. There's very few world-class 8:15 runners who can work full time. I think 5Ks, and beyond, a little bit easier to juggle around work.
No, I definitely see that.
You say you love it. What do you love about the sport, man?
I think you realise how much you love a thing when you can't do it anymore. And so during my many months of being injured, just the one thing I just wanted to do was just get back to the sport. What do I love about it? I think how freeing it is, even just outside of a sort of competition mindset point of view. Just be able to run, just, your stress goes. I guess the feeling of getting fitter is such a nice feeling, and it's so sort of intrinsically rewarding. And then there's a social element. where you just meet all these fantastic people, coaches, athletes, supporters, and yeah, it's definitely one of a kind.
Yeah, and on that social level, obviously the A100 team that the Brits are taking to the European indoors is, I guess, just a great display of the talent coming through. So how's that going to be, do you think? Because obviously you're leading that charge, but you're joined by kind of other guys getting their first big shot as well.
Here's going to be a fab team. Yeah, I get on well with Jack and Tom. I don't know. I think us three, we stand a good chance. I know the 15, the 3Ks, they're definitely, the athletes taking part in those are definitely more experienced. They've got those medals at those high level events. For us, well, I guess Tom's already done a European, he did the Euros outdoors, I think, last year. Am I right with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least for Jack and I, this is going to be a totally new experience. And I think going out there, at least for me, the most important thing is just learning. What's it like to compete at that level? But the thing is, I don't even know what I'm going to learn because I've never done it before, whether it's dynamics in the team environment, even specific things about what to do on race day. This is just a totally like novel experience. So I think that in itself is the most important thing. Obviously, racing is pretty important too, but the other side, I think, can't be understated.
I think, for you to experience the championships, so when I spoke to you as well, you were talking, one great thing about hitting that 145 indoors was the Euro under-23 qualifier as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're looking ahead to the summer and what that might bring. But I just wanted to touch on, you talk about how to go into a race, how to approach it, different times of warm-up, etc. I think a lot of people, we don't talk about this much on the podcast, but what is your pre-race routine? What is like the hours before as well? For an 8:15 runner, what does fueling look like? Are you taking bicarb? If so, how long before, etc.?
Yeah. Okay. It used to be a lot. There used to be a lot more. I've tried to streamline it as much as possible to just, I guess, the more things you have to juggle around, the harder it is. I guess to remember it all, and the more stress-inducing because it's like, oh no, I need to do this X time, whatever. So depending on whether I've done rounds before, maybe a nice bath in the morning. I did that before the final of the British Champs. Also, I find that just calms nerves as well. Nothing else works. Then as soon as you get in like 6-degree water, everything's okay again. 3 hours before, 3.5 hours before, have a meal. Try and avoid too much protein if possible because, it takes much longer to be digested. So, yeah, lots of carbs. Then, my free race routine.
It'd be great. An ice bath the morning of a race. This is rogue.
So this is for British Champs. I've got race at 3:40. So working back from that a couple of hours, I normally like to spend maybe 25 minutes, half an hour just rolling and stretching before going out on a run. I've got this fantastic, almost like vibrating foam roller. It is so good. I'd recommend it to anyone. That thing is magical. And then just before heading off for the warm up, I have this caffeine and carb gel. I wish I could afford the Morton one. I can't. It's the Velafort. But it does a trick. It's got 75 mg of caffeine and 22 grams of carbs. And then, then I, maybe just after that, I take bicarb, but it is a straight bicarb. So just go Sainsbury's. I need to think for my body weight, it's 21 grams because I think it's 0.3 grams of bicarb per kilogram of weight. So I've got this like mixer shaker. And it tastes so
Jesus, so what do you do? Yeah, you sort of get the powder and just mix it with water, do you? And
water, yeah.
Did you train yourself to do that? It all goes down okay, I guess.
I think that actually doesn't affect me too badly. And then, I take then I start my warm-up jog, maybe like 10 minutes or so, and I've got my dynamic drill routine, which is the same. I do it the same for training, same for racing. I find that it's keeping it uniform across the board. It just sort of helps keep you locked in, almost. At least I find that. There's no, I should do this, I should do that. It's very simple. It's what we've done 1,000 times before. And then, another caffeine gel shortly after starting that, cool room, and then, bash out on the track.
Yeah. Do you do a primer at all? Like, do you do like a longer rep? I know some like 8 guys do like a 200 at race pace, or if they can. I guess it's the issue.
I found that doesn't necessarily work for me. Okay. I normally stick to strides a little bit shorter, maybe 100 to 120. Yeah, Martin has mentioned that maybe strides, like longer primers, would be good to get that lactic. I guess get your body used to lactic before the race. For me, I've noticed it definitely gets me more fatigued. And it's a bit of a balancing act, so I normally try and stick to maybe 120, like as opposed to 200. So it's looking the legs turning over, but not necessarily putting yourself at too much of a, not damaging your prospects of the race.
Will you do that 120 at 8 pace? I mean, to be fair, for an 8 runner to do 200 at 8 pace is pretty hefty. 120 does make sense.
I mean, it depends if you actually can do 120, because at British Champs, you've got the you've got the wall pair underneath the track.
God, yeah.
Maybe 70, 80 meters. And it's not even a track surface. I mean, some guys did wear spikes then, fair play to them. I couldn't. But you can't necessarily get those longer strides in, unless you did it gap outside in the parking lot. Power plant.
This is a good point. This is something that you're slowly going to have to work with. Is those race preparations when the British Champs is a fine example. Those who haven't been to that Birmingham indoor arena, the warm up zone is like in the depths of the stadium, isn't it? Like 3-4 floors down, and there's it's just a sports hall, and you're really trying to get fired up and race. It's quite limiting, and I guess you probably are going to experience that on the circuit as well, and there'll be other stadiums which will be similar.
Yeah, I feel like stuff like that's going to happen. I guess a good trait to have, and something which I've learned, I guess, to adopt is just being adaptable. I guess you don't really know what situation you're going to be put in, so being able to function and I guess not get overwhelmed in a variety of situations is quite useful. I found that has helped for me.
Absolutely. And then I guess just before we finish up the pod, I'm looking forward to next weekend, but also further afield. So Matt and I were looking at the kind of Road to the World Indoors before your 28th spot at the moment. Is that something that's on your mind, or is it just get through the Euros and then we'll see?
It was on our mind. I think it still is in the back. But looking at the selection policy, I think GB can only take the top 20 in the world or top 15. And I think that time roughly equates to 1:45.3, 1:45.4 indoors. There aren't any more time trials necessarily between now and then that we've got on our planner. Unless that time magically happens in the semis, I'll happily call the indoor season the Euros. And then, I'm heading up to altitude with Birmingham.
Nice.
On end of March to April for the first time, actually. And then, so do that and then start outdoors.
Nice stuff, man. Yeah, you talk about heading up with Birmingham. Let's just quickly give the training group some airtime, because obviously, we used to see a lot of you and Jack Gunn, but you briefly mentioned he's injured at the moment, is he? And he's committed to Adam State, is that right? So who else is in that training group of you guys? And is there anyone else up and coming who we should be keeping an eye on in 2025?
Bath has got really good depth. Not many people, I guess, know it. But my housemates have got Oliver Capps and Basil Rock. Basil's 139 guy, indoors and outdoors. So he got his PB, almost equal his outdoor PB indoors this season at the British Champs. I think he was in Jonas's heat with Callum Dodds. Then Oliver Capps. You've got some other 800 guys coming up, like Seb Crow. On the women's side, we've got steeplechasers like Lizzie Ingram, Grace Roberts. We've got a good depth.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. And look, Justin, I guess thanks so much for coming on the pod, and best of luck at Euros. We hope you have a great experience as well. But we also hope that you come back with as a finalist, and look, get yourself in the mix.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.